finished 7th in the table?
Well, one, it was a huge surprise. I think, England being reigning world champions, it came as a shock to a lot of people how they performed, or would I say underperformed. I think one or two maybe factors in that. I would say maybe England were a little underprepared going into this tournament. They'd not played a lot of 50 over cricket. If they had, not being arrogant, but it was kind of against Ireland, and you look at the other teams going into that World Cup, India, Pakistan, all were playing in the Asia Cup in 50 over cricket, tough tournament, and then Australia and South Africa had a tough series against one another, and England going into that, I would say, was a little bit underprepared. So disappointing, because we have been the trailblazers for cricket. I would say one day cricket for the last 2 or 3 years. We've broke so many records, highest run chase, highest total. We've been amazing how we've played our brand of cricket, and we are allowed to play badly, and we've just not played as well as we possibly can. And I think we've been a bit inconsistent as a team, and maybe we have been underprepared, but other teams have played much better cricket, and that sometimes happens in world tournaments.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned a little bit there, but what do you think of conditions as well, or what do you think went wrong?
I think conditions, India's always a difficult place to play, with different situations, different conditions, but a lot of these international cricketers for England have all been in India playing IPLs for a number of years now, so you can't really blame the conditions. You can maybe say, central contracts was announced throughout the tournament. So when people have sort of highlighted there's fractions within the England team, I wouldn't say there's fractions. This team gets on very, very well, and is run well by Joss and Matthew Mott. I think the problem is when players have got 1 year, 2 year, 3 year deals, there's always going to be talk in the dressing room, regardless of who, because one player thinks he should deserve 2 and he might be on 1. So I think that didn't help the cause. I think also going into that tournament, they played the 100, and then they're not playing much 50 over cricket, so sometimes you're playing catch up. But look, it's not a blame. So players don't want to blame one another, and you don't want to blame this, or there's too many senior players. I think England have just gone into that underprepared and not performed how they actually can as a team, because this team 8 weeks ago beat New Zealand in an ODI series, so you can't really blame much else, but the players just underperforming.
And did you think before the World semi-final and the final, and maybe even win it?
Absolutely, yeah. How England have sort of played, like I said, the last 2 or 3 years, they've been wonderful to watch. There's such a strength in depth within the England team, so there's always healthy competition for places as well. But I just feel that they haven't played how they can, and that can happen. I was surprised as anyone how England, to finish 7th, they were one of the favourites leading into this World Cup. So it came as a huge shock to lots of people, to Sky commentators, to ex-players. They've just not been at the races, have they?
No, definitely not. And you mentioned the central contracts there. I think they handled it correctly in general.
I think there's always, when a team doesn't qualify for semi-finals and World Cup finals, when a team have been so strong and so dominant for such a long time, there is going to be talk of ifs and buts and maybes, and why did this happen? And I felt that maybe one thing that England or the ECB could have done better was actually announcing the central contracts, whether you do it after the World Cup, not during or before. And you look at, David Willey, he's one player that went out there and performed admirably under pressure in a World Cup, and actually he was the only one that didn't get a central contract. And for me, that's not ideal, and that's not great preparation going into a World Cup.
Do you think that's why he performed so well?
I would say he's bound to be frustrated and upset and angry. He did an interview for Sky, and I think he was disappointed with how it's been handled. For me, England have done so many wonderful things the last 2 or 3 years, not just on the field, but off the field. Rob Key's inclusion, Baz McCullum, Matthew Mott, they've all done a brilliant job. They've got that sort of togetherness within the coaching unit and the staff and the background staff. But I just felt that was a backward step, announcing it before a World Cup and during. It's not going to help the cause, is it? And then when you're not playing well, that's probably highlighted even more.
100%. And you touch on into a one-day tournament.
I mean, India is a tough place to go. Conditions are different, pitches are different from north to south of India. I think clarity, maybe, but what I felt is you can't make excuses. Again, this team beat New Zealand, who are a fantastic one-day team, not so long ago. So for me, I don't buy the excuses of, we didn't have clarity, we didn't know our roles, we're a senior team, one or two players are not going to play or have an appearance in a World Cup further down the line. I don't really buy that. I think, you don't want to make excuses, and Moeen Ali is a wonderful cricketer. I just feel as though they've just not played as well as they can as a team, and that's what it boils down to, really. And I think you've got to hold your hand up and say, we've just not been at the races during this tournament.
Yeah, and moving forward, do you think the right people to sort of lead the one-day team moving forward?
Absolutely. You look what they've done so far. Yes, they've had a bad World Cup, but I think Jos Buttler is a wonderful one-day performer. He's arguably up there with the best in the world. He runs his team well. He's gained a lot of experience from Owen Morgan, his time. And you look what he's achieved as a one-day captain. Matthew Mott has been there and done it. Yes, they are allowed to play not well, and other teams are allowed to play well. And I think changing coaches after one bad tournament is probably not going to be the right way to go about things. So you stick with these guys. And, Joss has held his hand up. He said he's not played very well himself individually. And, I'm sure there's probably 5 or 6 players that would say we've not played well individually. And that's why they've not, qualified for the semi-finals. But you can't keep changing coaches. They've done a great job so far.
Now, talking of backroom staff, Rob Key said, do you think that's sort of true? And do you think that's the right decision?
I mean, I like Rob Key. I know him as a cricketer and as a person, and that interview was open and honest, and was upfront and said it how he felt, which is fantastic. I just felt England were underprepared in terms of, if you're going into a World Cup as reigning champions, and you're playing Ireland in a 3-match ODI series, and all your players, or you would say 90% of the players that are going to the World Cup are not playing in that series, well, that's being underprepared, and that's not being ready for a huge tournament. So yes, I kind of agree. Maybe England were underprepared, and not playing in that series meant that players rested, and then you go to India and you're kind of playing catch up a little bit. So yeah, maybe you've got to look at the schedule and how, players are going to be rested and when you can use them when you're playing in big games. So look, it's been a huge summer for England. And then a World Cup straight after, I presume they probably wanted to rest one or two of the big tournament players. But with that, you look now how England have played, and they've not played as well as they possibly can.
I won't know because I've not been involved in it, but you've obviously been in it. Or is that higher than those guys?
I think it's down to a whole team environment. It's not just the players. It's your captain, your coach, your director of cricket. It's sitting down and, getting ready and prepped and looking at all the little 1%ers, where we're going to be playing India, what type of wickets we're going to be getting, who's going to play on which specific day. So maybe they have been underprepared, and Rob Key said that. So, well done to him for sort of being open and upfront with his feelings and how he felt England have done in this World Cup. So maybe moving forward, they'll learn from that experience of not doing things maybe in the right way.
I wanted to touch on for what they brought to the 2019 World Cup.
No, I don't think anything will be tarnished. I think they'll all be bitterly disappointed with their performance. This team has created a legacy, there's no doubt about it. Not just this 11, but there's probably 20, 25 players who have been exceptional and set so many high standards for themselves. Creating history, run chasers, highest scores. They've been brilliant to watch. So they have created something very special. Like I said, they're allowed to play badly, and they have done. And I don't think it'll happen again, because this team, they can go on, probably most of this team can go on and play in the next World Cup quite comfortably. They're still young enough, and I still feel there's a lot more to give with this team.
Talking about the future and the next World Cup,